The real sounds of Africa to once again kick off our World Football Phone-In. And this morning we're talking football in Europe and South America and players from over there playing in our leagues. You can, of course, join in the conversation or the fun, whichever way you see it. The number to call is simply this: 08085 909 693. That's 08085 909 693. You can text us on 85058, or you can email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. And we are at 5 Live on social media. We've got the legendino Tim Vickery with us in Rio, covering South American football and players from over there playing in our leagues. Tim, good morning.
Good morning, lovely to be here.
And the Galatasaray's Paul Serres is over this side of the water, covering everything to do with European football and players from over there playing in our leagues as well. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. How are we?
We're very well. Do you want to declare an interest first, or shall I?
I would like to say how humbled I am to be in the presence of greatness, Dotun. Congratulations on your recent award for Best Speech Presenter on the wireless. It's thoroughly deserved.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And can't do it without you, of course. Anyway, talking about declaring an interest, we have one to declare, don't we, Tim? Here we go.
BBC Radio 5 Live's World Football Phone-In is turning 20. To celebrate, Dotun Adebayo is hosting a special 4-hour episode in the early morning of Saturday, the 2nd of December, just hours after the draw for the 2018 World Cup. If you're interested in joining Dotun and some very special guests at the 5 Live studios in Salford, please email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. Tell us which country you support and how long you've been listening to the World Football Phone-In. Please note, we cannot guarantee a place for everyone who expresses an interest. You must be over 18 and you must be able to arrange your own transport and accommodation.
Yeah, I was told not to offer everybody the opportunity to crash out of my digs in the ghetto Salford, but, you know, you never know, you never know. Are you going to be there, Tim?
No doubts about it. Yeah, I'm coming. I'm coming, baby. I'm coming.
You're coming over. Come on, speak proper English now. You've been over there too long. Anyway, so you're coming over for that. How about you, Paul? Will you be over here as well?
I'm coming up. I'm coming up indeed. I wouldn't miss it.
Well, yeah. It's not up if you're in Scotland, by the way. It's down.
As long as, you know, I've been assured by the producers that we won't have any more trouser incidents like we did last time.
Well,
do you remember?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for bringing that up. The only problem is we won't have a trouser incident anymore. They've offered to purchase a belt for me this time. However, I fear I have to dust out my old Nigerian... Oh, there goes Didier Drogba.
Yeah, he wants to be there as well.
He wants to be there, but...
That's what he's saying. He's saying, can I come? And I'm saying, you can't. You're a dog.
Yeah, you tell him that. Just say boo to him, for goodness sake. Say boo.
Well, he's not a goose. You know, I don't go. You know, I only go around saying boo to geese.
You're on form tonight. You're on form tonight. I was going to say that I'm going to bring my Nigerian football shirt. I'm going to dust it off, but unfortunately, I think it might be very tight for next week. So as long as nobody objects, you might see a roly-poly Nigerian presenting the programme next week. It'll be worth looking at on the website at the very least. Okay, 08085 909 693 is the number. Let's kick off with this great question, I think, actually, from Richard in Stonycote. He says, Ronaldo apparently is in a secret deal with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. The rumours of Neymar to Real Madrid are abroad as well. Was this all cooked up to get Neymar from Barcelona to Madrid in a roundabout way?
Well, Dotun, you laugh, but I mean, you know, I laughed at when when Neymar made the move, and it was suggested by 2 or 3 journalists that this was a roundabout way of doing it exactly that, and I laughed at the time. And well, you know, it's after the issues with Figo and with other players that have crossed the divide over the years between, Barcelona and Madrid. You feel that buffer of a year or two in Paris would calm the ire of Barcelona's supporters, but I think they're pretty angry with him anyway. And as such, if he wanted to make that move, I'm sure that Real Madrid would would definitely be interested. Obviously, he's an amazing footballer, and also to get one up over their bitter rivals. So it does sound far-fetched. It sounds a little sort of out there, but I mean, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if that was to happen, because, you know, if you look at it on the basis level, there are very, very few teams that would be able to afford to buy Neymar from Paris Saint-Germain, and Real Madrid are one of them.
Yeah, but before we go and get a Brazilian perspective on this, this whole conspiracy theory hangs on whether Ronaldo is going to PSG.
I mean, does it? Ronaldo's coming towards the end of his career. He's still obviously massively effective, and Neymar is the heir to the throne that Messi and Ronaldo will vacate, you know, when they retire in not too distant future. So I don't know if Ronaldo does go to Paris, it's a last hurrah, I guess, in his career in European football anyway. Given the choice between the two, I don't think many would choose, you know, with their ages and with current form, I suppose. I don't think there are many that would choose Ronaldo over Neymar at the moment. Not to say that Neymar is as complete a player or even anywhere near that level just yet, but you know, for the long game, I think that most people would probably take Neymar over Ronaldo at the moment.
What's the buzz on this in Brazil, Tim?
Well, he won't talk about it. I mean, someone after the game against Celtic in midweek, in a mixed zone afterwards, a Brazilian journalist stuck a microphone under his nose and said, "And what about Real Madrid?" And he just walked straight on by. You know, he walked on by quicker than Dionne Warwick. He wasn't having that at all. I'm not a great fan of your conspiracy theories unless they involve the JFK assassination, in which case I believe all of them. But you can kind of see the logic behind it. The only little thing I'd have in my mind is, if you were Real Madrid, would you trust him enough to want to make him the main man there? Do you really think that he is going to give you more joy than headaches? And he is a extraordinary player, but there is a lot of spoilt kid in him, and I'm firmly of the opinion that the two go together. That part of the reason that he is an extraordinary player is that he's got that little bit of spoilt kid in him. You won't take him out. You won't take it out of him. He'll try and control it, but it's always likely to come to the surface. And I don't know if, you know, after the recent Brazil friendly against Japan, crying in the press conference when Chichi was when the Brazil coach was praising him, you're thinking, you know, he's 25 or something. You know, grow up a little bit. But he won't. He can't. And as a footballer, that's one of the things that makes him so great. He tries things, and he's got this capacity to improvise at pace. But you do worry about him a little bit. When I thought, that 0-0 draw at Wembley against England, I thought he was terrible. It was really, really poor. And we're talking about a great player who still, in the game, he managed to do a few terrific things that very, very few other players could do. But I thought for most of the game, his options, he either tried to do too much and was selfish, or when he was looking to give the pass, he'd almost make a point of making the difficult pass rather than the simple one just to keep the ball moving. He'd go for the kind of Hollywood pass. And, if you're Real Madrid and you're seeing that and you're thinking, can he cope? Can he cope with, all right, it's one thing being the main man at Paris Saint-Germain. And there are a few problems there, obviously. But can he cope with being the main man at Real Madrid? And in terms of talent, no problems at all. But in terms of what he is as a man, would you hand him that much responsibility? What do you think on that, Paul?
I think, yeah. I mean, I do. I see exactly where you're coming from. But everything you said, it could also have been said about Cristiano Ronaldo at that age, at 25. You know, he's got that. It's not a very attractive quality in a human being. I think that petulance, that desire to succeed at all costs, even if it makes you look less of a person, I think. But Ronaldo has got that too, and I think that we spoke at length about Neymar and his move from Barcelona to Paris, about how he needed to go on and be the main man. It's better to be the main man at a smaller club, although. Smaller in what terms? In terms of fan base, yeah. In terms of history, yeah. But in terms of potential, in terms of actual talent, in terms of the ability to go and win a Champions League in the next season or so. Well, PSG might be the in front of Barcelona there with the players that Barcelona have lost, that have retired and moved on over recent seasons. So I think that quirky personality of Neymar, shall we say, I think that is the kind of personality that football supporters can get behind. And the reason for that is it shows an innate desire to win and to be the best. And I think you absolutely need that to be the main man at Real Madrid. And I think that Real Madrid holds such a reputation, particularly with people in Latin America and the Latin world, that the respect would be there, I think, from Neymar. Although, I'll be honest, I would be surprised if this happened, within the next sort of couple of years. I think he'll enjoy Paris. I think he'll take them to a Champions League. I really do. And Mbappe, obviously, and the squad that they've constructed there is outstanding. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I would be surprised if it happened in the next sort of 18 months, 2 years.
It was 20 years
Paul,
ago
while we're
today.
on the subject of, while we're on the subject of great young players, I've heard. I think this is the first time that we've spoken since England's Under-17 World Cup win, and I've heard you in the past rave about the young generation coming through at Man City. And Phil Foden was chosen as the player of that tournament, and I thought he was just absolutely mind-blowingly exceptional. Were you aware that he was as good as he is, and how do you see the future for him?
It's difficult, Tim. When one of the first things that Pep Guardiola did when he joined City was to move all of the age groups up a level. So the under-17s moved into the under-18s, the under-18s into the 21s, and those that were good enough from the elite development squad were pushed towards the first team. Now, Phil Foden, it's difficult when you're watching 17-year-old lads play against each other to really grasp how good players are. I mean, you could see that relatively players like Jadon Sancho, who chose to move to Borussia Dortmund in the summer rather than stay and fight for a place at City, and it looks like a good move for him because he's involved. He's playing in the first team already, which would not have happened yet at City. But Brahim Diaz, the young lad that City signed from Malaga a few years ago, Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho, they were the three that really stood out. And to be honest, Jadon Sancho was the one that stood out most for me. He's a really elegant player. He's one of those players that moves at such pace, but it looks like he's just at a canter. Everything is effortless to him. But Foden is a smaller figure. They call him the Stockport Iniesta with a bit of a tongue in cheek there from City supporters. But he is that kind of player. He's a real driving force, and he's already been, he's on the verge of being called up to the under-21s at 17 years old. Now, he's exceptional, and he has
so many other teams to talk about. So,
of course.
Now, what were you doing around this time 20 years ago, Paul?
1997.
You're bunking off school.
I'd left school, actually. I was doing my A-levels.
I was going to say, do you go to school at this time of night? If you said yeah. Anyway,
I was probably doing something unspeakable at 17 years old at this time on a Saturday morning.
Goodness sake. And Tim, what were you doing around this time, around 20 years ago?
I was starting doing this.
Really? Really?
Yeah. That's the whole point.
Do you think I'm so low as to try and turn the football phoning into a 20 years ago today Tim Vickery was doing this football phoning kind of thing? No, I'm not that low. Because Jonathan in Middlesbrough says, around this time 20 years ago, Borough's brilliant Brazilian Emerson Moises Costa, not Juninho, did the first of his disappearing acts back to Brazil. I was wondering what the people in Brazil thought about him at the time, whether he was even close to the national team, and if Tim knows what he's up to now. I thought he was hugely talented and was amazed his career fizzled out the way it did, as he looked like he had the skill, the power, the strength, and to top it off, an amazing shot as well to make him a top player. The show is great, and I'm looking forward to hearing the anniversary show 20 years ago, more or less.
Great player, Emerson. I met up with him. My God, our time goes. It's probably 2 years ago that we sat down and had a chat, and he told me all about his time with Middlesbrough. And his problem was that he went abroad very early, and he really made his name in Portugal. And 20 years ago, it's kind of pre-full globalisation, and that the public back home weren't particularly aware of him. And so he didn't really have a constituency to get into the national team. And if he was doing so let's imagine that he was with Middlesbrough in the Premier League now, playing at the level that he was 20 years ago, I think he would be a Brazil international. And he knows that he was good enough to play for Brazil, and he's disappointed that it didn't happen for him. It could have happened for him. He was certainly, I think he was better than the people that they took, the central midfielders that they took to the 1998 World Cup. I think he could have done a really good job for them, and perhaps made the difference between coming first and coming second. But he looks back with huge affection on his time at Middlesbrough, real affection for it. And if he could have it again, I think things would have had a different ending. And if he could turn the clock back, I don't think he'd have gone home in the way that he went home. And I think things would have ended up differently. And he could have gone to Inter Milan. That was the calibre of player. The thing that stopped him going to Inter Milan was Roy Hodgson, because he'd seen Roy Hodgson play Roberto Carlos in midfield and not at fullback, and he thought, well, no, I don't think I want to go there. Could have gone to Barcelona. He was in the frame to go to Barcelona, and that didn't work either. And I think after that, it was all a little bit of a disappointment. But a lovely fella and a truly great player, I think, who could have achieved more in the game.
I wonder if listeners will contribute tonight and let me know which footballer you think regrets the most when they look back on their career and realise what they could have achieved that they didn't achieve for whatever reason. Which are the footballers that you think regret it the most? I think there'll be a lot to suggest. 85058 by text, or you can email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. And Paul, sorry to cut you off when you were going on about Man City. But I
was talking about England, actually, Dotun. But,
I know, but you were talking about Man City. Yeah, exactly. Because I have to declare an interest now as well, because I've brought in Team Dotun tonight. And who's laughing? This time next year we could be winning the World Cup. I'm glad to hear that. Team Dotun could be winning the World Cup.
Was that your homage to Del Boy there? This time next year,
exactly. That was it. Well done, well spotted. Okay, so who have we got in Team Dotun? Let's talk about an antidote to a Man City fan. Connor.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks very much. And you're a journalist, are you? A broadcaster, a sports reporter, or a student?
All of the above and a student.
And a student, indeed. And you got anything to say to the Man City supporter?
Just, think about your priorities, man.
Yeah,
look at you stirring up trouble, Don. It's not that kind of show.
Trouble. I'm just trying to balance things out. You've gone on about City. Let the United lot have a little bit of a say. Although, as you know, Paul, there's only one team in Manchester.
It's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Only one?
Yeah, only one team in Manchester.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
you
true.
agree.
No, that's fair. No, that's
okay.
fair. I'll give
because
that, yeah.
There's one team we can see from over here, and we're not in Manchester.
No, true.
Thank you. Just wanted to confirm that. Mike, God, you've had a rough time, haven't you? Who do you support?
I'm a West Ham fan.
Oh, gosh, right. Is it grown, or are you happy to see David Moyes there?
I think, to be honest, the less said about this season, the better.
Well, you might have to say a lot more at the end of the season, mate, because you may not be in this league.
I'm sure we're good enough to stay up, but
I saw loads of bubbles. I saw the bubble machine on the telly.
Are you honestly sure enough? Because it's really close, I think, for West Ham. Things need to improve dramatically and very quickly, and I don't think that the right man has been appointed for that. I think Moyes has taken a real bashing over the last few years with his perceived failures, and I think that he needs time as well to sort of to get his mojo back, I guess, in management. He's a good coach, but just like players who go through poor form and a bad move or whatever, they take time, sometimes never come back, but take time to get back to those previous levels. I think that West Ham is not the club to afford Moyes the time to do that at the moment. I really do. I think West Ham will struggle. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I never said it was going to be an easy season, but I thought that we have the quality. I mean, the likes of Lanzini had a good game earlier tonight, Arnautovic as well. We have the quality to stay up. I wouldn't have picked Moyes as sort of my first choice for the next West Ham manager, but at the end of the day...
Who would you have picked?
To be honest, I would have...
Who was available and you lot could afford?
Yeah, out of who was available, I think Moyes probably was, as much as I hate to say it, the best option. But there are sort of other managers before me. I mean, could have taken a punt on Chris Coleman, who's now at Sunderland.
Yeah. And that's a question mark as to why he went to Sunderland rather than, going to the likes of...
I mean, if he left it a week, he could be the new West Brom manager.
If he left it another week, he could have been the new Everton manager. Who knows? But, okay, Matt, what do you do, by the way?
I've just finised my Masters in Broadcast Journalism.
In Broadcast Journalism?
Yes.
Are you here to teach me a trick or two?
I'm hoping it's the other way round.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, great to have you on board, Team Dotun, as it were. And one more, Harry. Hello, Harry.
Hi, hello.
What was it that Leeds, what did they used to say? What was, in their glory days? It was like...
That was way before my time, I believe.
Okay. It was a while ago, actually.
Ask your granddad.
Exactly. Ask my granddad. He would.
Okay. Anyway, but you are also a student and a wannabe broadcaster?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we've got
indeed.
3 young journalists in. I say wannabe broadcasters. You are broadcasters because you're broadcasting now, yeah? So you're going to have to up your game, guys. You're on Team Dotun for this World Football Phone-In tonight.
Proud to be part of the team.
Absolutely.
08085 909 693. I'm only the referee. I can't help you guys. I cannot help you. 08085 909. They're looking petrified, by the way, Tim. 08085 909.
Just, well,
they don't know what's coming.
It's time for the Robert Mitchum advice.
Which is
Point
what?
your suit at the microphone.
That's a good
That's
advice.
what there is to it.
That's
Point
a good
your suit
advice.
at the microphone.
That's a good advice. And also, the Dotun Adebayo advice is make it out to the door very quickly if you need to use the loo, okay? 08085 909 6... What?
I know you said they were students, Don, but how young are they?
No, they're students. Okay. Is it possible, this is Doug in Oregon says, is it possible to dig up from the archives Tim's first ever question answer from 1997? I am guessing he mentioned Raphael Scheidt somewhere in the answer. Harry,
it's
hang
cruel.
on.
Cruel.
Tim, hang on. Give the youngsters a chance. What do you think Tim's first ever question on the World Football Phone-In 20 years ago? If you don't remember Leeds from those days, you won't remember Tim either, but have a guess. What
Was
it
this
would have been.
1997?
1997, yeah.
So I was 1 year old.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The football
Stop
was
showing
still
off.
going on. Yeah, exactly. Stop showing off. The football was going on at the time. Pele, it could have been a question on Pele, or it could have been a question on Maradona. Yeah.
Possibly. I honestly would have no idea back then.
Okay. Was there a
Well, look,
question?
so 20 years ago, around about this time of the year, we would have been awaiting
Okay.
the draw for France 98.
Yeah,
So that
that's
might
good,
have something
that's
to do
good.
with it, right?
Yeah, that's very good. But would you say, out of the 2 questions that came up, which, out of the ones I mentioned, Pele or Maradona, which is the first one that was mentioned on the World Football Phone-In? Let's do it that way.
I'm going to throw a wild card and say Maradona.
Maradona. And Mike, what did you go for?
I would have gone for Pele.
Pele. And Connor, what did you go for?
Pele for me as well. Yeah.
Pele, 2 Peles and 1 Maradona. Paul, out of interest, what would you go for?
We're going to go for Maradona just to even things up.
I'm
Keep
going to
it
go for
interesting.
Maradona as well, Tim. Which of those 2 great players did you get a question for the World Football Phone-In first about? It wouldn't have been 20 years ago, of course. It would have been slightly later, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go interactive until 2003, and it was, it was a 5-minute slot, and then a 10-minute slot, and a 15-minute slot. But it was just me rattling on with a poor presenter who had to listen to me. But had it been 1997, had it been interactive, then I think it would have been Maradona, because that's more or less around the time when he failed his final drug test, and that put a definitive end to his career. So he was still current in 1997 as a player, which I suppose really tells you how long ago it all was.
Interestingly enough, Team Dotun is now down to just 1 player. 08085.
Rats deserting a sinking ship
Well,
already.
they are,
Don.
yeah.
Across the UK.
This is BBC 5 Live. Up all night with Dotun Adebayo.
Yeah, the number to call if you'd like to join in our World Football phone-in is 08085 909 693. You can ask any question that you want about the regions that we're covering, Europe and South America. Literally any question. It doesn't have to be a football question sometimes. And you can also talk to us about players from those regions playing in our own leagues. The number to call is 08085 909 693. I will ask you to declare an interest if you're a Man City fan. But everybody else can call and say whatever they want without declaring an interest. Is that all right, Galatasaray, Paul Serras? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Because if they're a Man City fan, they'll just call in because you spend half the time on a World Football phone talking about Man City. That's why I'm asking them to declare an interest.
Dotun is, it's a show based on the questions our listeners ask.
Indeed, indeed. And somehow you always manage to get Man City into the question somehow. I don't know how you do it, but you do it very well, I must say. The legend, Tim Vickery is here as well, covering South American football and any questions you have about South American players wherever they're playing in our leagues. And also, Tim, come on. If we're going to start sticking the boot into the Gooners, and you're going to mention Tottenham, please declare your interest as well. Is that okay?
I have absolutely nothing to say.
Well, after last weekend, you shouldn't. After last weekend,
I'm keeping a dignified silence.
After last weekend, that's what you want to do. I saw my postman this morning. He's a North Londoner, but on the other side, on the sort of Spud side, and I shouted across the road to him, "There you go, you lot, you let North London down again." And he was shouting X, Y, Z. He said he's not going to deliver any more letters to my house. But I just said, no, mate. Every single time Tottenham let you down. We've got Team Dotun in the house as well, and they will join in. Three young men, all students of this beautiful game of ours called broadcasting. And they're here to contribute as well. They know a little bit about football. Although Harry says he doesn't know anything about football. Well, before the end of this World Football phoning, you're going to learn a thing or two.
I can't wait for the education. I'm excited.
Well, exactly. You may not learn anything about football per se, not the World Football phoning. Mike's here as well.
Hi, good morning.
Mike's a hammer, or what we call in East London an iron. And no, just no, okay? And Connor's here as well, and Connor is what we call a Cockney Red?
No, absolutely not. I'm from York. I'm personally offended with the suggestion I'm from London.
No, but I thought all Man United fans were Cockneys.
I mean, it's a correlation. I wouldn't say it's a causation.
You're getting into physics now, You're going to test me tonight. But generally, are all Manchester United fans Cockneys or not? What percentage of them?
I mean, all you have to look at is the train from Piccadilly to Euston, isn't it? On the train home.
It was packed when I take it. It's always packed. Actually, a couple of Swedish guys on there as well. Okay, 08085 909 693. Let's get into business of football now. So Stuart in Wembley says, great broadcast once again. Yep, Emerson was a great baller, but wondering what on earth happened to the real Betis left winger, Denilson de Oliveira. Had so much promise during the 90s. We were all blown away by his ball skills and pace. Would love to know what he's doing now. Thanks, guys.
Media work. He makes a living. He's very charismatic. He's actually very sharp. He's a bright lad. I think perhaps he can overdo the showman stuff at times. During his playing career, he used to refer to himself as Denilson's show. So he does go on that. Go on that one. I feel a little bit sorry for him looking back at his career, because when he was made the world's most expensive player in '97, he was being asked to do too much. I mean, how many times do wingers decide football games, especially 19-year-old wingers? It doesn't happen very often. You can have a winger who's fabulously successful in a great side, but the game is won or lost down the middle of the park. That's where a side achieves the dominance to bring the winger into the game. But when he went to Betis and is expected to carry I don't think it's harsh to call them a mediocre La Liga side, and they're not one of the top sides in Spain. And he's expected to carry them. And obviously with that transfer fee, he's doubly expected to carry them from the wing. I always thought that was asking too much, and it didn't really work for him. And he flitted about. He had his good moments, and he got a World Cup winners medal from 2002 when he was a very useful substitute. But I think he was a player who, through no fault of his own, was caught up in the hype too soon. And had he taken things step by step and ended up in his peak years at a Real Madrid or something like that, I think people would have many more memories of him. But you've only got one career, and those decisions you take are absolutely vital. And when you've got a club, when you're 19 and you've got a club willing to make you the biggest transfer fee in the world, it's difficult to say no. But in retrospect, I wonder if he would have said no. If he could have it all again, if he would take a different route.
Well, you see, that's another one, if he could have it all again. So who are the footballers that you think regret the most if they could have had it all again, that they would have gone and taken a different route? Let me know by text 85058, email up4night@bbc.co.uk. And Paul, this is from one of our listeners who says, PSG were outstanding against Celtic on Wednesday night, but how on earth can PSG beat UEFA FFP? What's that? Complaint?
Financial fair play.
Oh, right, of course it is. Complaint for the 2017 to 2018 season. Yeah, why on earth can they be in the competition, I think is the point this is making, isn't it?
Well, punishment will come should FIFA decide that it's warranted. Obviously, when the financial year is up and all accounts have been submitted, the one thing that they have said with regards to the signing of Mbappe is that any fee paid next summer will count for this year's figures. So PSG have already been punished once for financial fair play irregularities, and you find it very, very difficult to see how they would be able to avoid some sorts of financial fair play punishment. However, we've seen in recent seasons, the last 2 or 3 seasons, move away from financial fair play, and I think not necessarily through policy, but there's definitely been less of an implementation of it. We've seen a really strange situation where the head of the Spanish league has tried to stop the Neymar transfer, and has asked UEFA and FIFA to punish Paris Saint-Germain. So clearly on the Spanish side of things, they're convinced that financial fair play has been breached. Although saying that, we're yet to really see one of the very wealthy, big European clubs challenge through the courts the legality of financial fair play. It's contrary to EU competition law, for a start, and there has been whispers in the past that maybe certain clubs have avoided chastisement at the hands of the powers that be in world football because they have waited. They have basically said, we're going to get back to you on this, FIFA, because we're currently consulting our lawyers and we want to see whether we can challenge this regulation in the European courts. So I think PSG have spent much more than their revenue, and according to the rules of financial fair play, they will have breached for this financial year. So we'll see what happens. But,
funny how you didn't bring in Man City on this question. Funny.
Well, I see. The thing is, Dotun, I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. So let me know which way you want me to go, and I'll play along with the game. All right?
On this occasion, would have liked you to be damned. Anyway, Tim. Talking of Tim,
I don't like cricket.
yeah, let's catch up with the latest at the Gabba in the Ashes. Henry Moran is there for us. Henry, apologies about that, but we've got Tim Vickery with us. You know what he's like.
Well, we're into the afternoon session, Dotun. Good morning for England, taking 3 wickets. Australia 219 for 7. Remember, England's first innings total 302. So still work for Australia to do to reach parity in the first innings. England will feel pretty happy with life at the moment. The one worry for them is the fact that captain Steve Smith is still there, unbeaten on 83. England do have a relatively new ball in their hands, though. Just 9.2 overs have been bowled with it, and it's so far yielded conceded a couple of wickets as well, one apiece for Broad and Anderson. The wicket of Smith is the prize one. At the other end, Pat Cummins has just hit his first boundary up to the long-on boundary to bring some much-needed cheer for these Australian supporters. And of course, you're mentioning football, Dotun, and one feature you always get with the Barmy Army on tour around the world is you get those St George flags that go around with various football teams that tend to actually be the lower league teams you see. You don't see many of your Manchester Uniteds and Arsenal. I'm looking around the ground and I can see a Bradford City, a Carlisle United, there's a Hull City as well around. And I may be slightly biased here, but when the TV screen, the big screen here at the Gabba, panned round and showed the Oxford United flag unfurling, it was at that moment that the first wicket of the day fell. And I'm not saying it was linked necessarily, but as a man that spends far too much time at the Cassham Stadium, I'm just saying that there might be a link.
Listen, Henry, I'm not trying to be biased, but, you know, when it comes to football and you're only allowed to talk about the non-outfield players because you are the cat, as everybody knows. Henry is our goalkeeper on Five Live. He's Five Live's best goalie. So who would you say, it's true, who would you say the best goalie is in Europe or South America? Who's the best one for you?
Oh, I think David De Gea has to be. At the moment, David De Gea. But I think Johnny Bairstow, the England wicket-keeper, might be putting his hand up for a little bit of cat-like. His catch earlier on today was something else. But no, it's got to be David De Gea. And also, David De Gea's got the best hashtag, because whenever he makes a good save, then out comes the hashtag Dave Saves, and that always makes me smile. So I think it's got to be De Gea. But if we're talking the greatest ever, and we're going to go to South America, it's got to be Jose Luis Chilavert, the Paraguayan, the one that used to take the free kicks and the penalty. Because I think, like all goalkeepers, I secretly think that I'm a centre forward, and any goalkeeper that has the ability to actually have a go at taking a few free kicks and penalties is all right by me.
You're not bad on the outfield as well. You know me. I was only teasing. Yeah, well done. Thanks very much, Henry. We'll catch up with you later from the Gabba on the latest in the Ashes. And of course, it's all on Five Live Sports Extra as well. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, about David De Gea, would you, Connor? You'd agree with that?
Absolutely. I don't think there's really a contest anymore.
Isn't there, Paul? Paul, there isn't a contest?
I think Manuel Neuer would probably think that there's a contest, and I've got
them at it. Is what I've been trying to do all night. Yeah, go on.
The last 15 years, how many times have we written off Gigi Buffon as as past it or whatever, and he's come back and he's outstayed so many of those pretenders to the throne. I think Buffon will go down as one of the greatest of all time, probably top 3 of all time. And not sure you can argue with that. And I meant to say to Henry,
let them argue. What do you mean you're not sure? That's not the way to conduct a fair conversation. I'm not sure you can't argue with that. I'm not sure you can argue with that.
I think you can. I don't disagree. It's Connor, by the way, but I don't think you can argue with the idea that Buffon is one of the greatest, obviously. But I think at the moment, if you want to judge all of the goalkeepers currently playing in Europe, there isn't a keeper that is tested as often as David De Gea is at such a high level, who makes so many excellent saves. He's got absolutely everything in the bag in a way that I just think, obviously, Gigi Buffon's getting a little bit older. He's not maybe as agile as he once was. You've got Manuel Neuer, who, despite everything, every time I watch him, I feel he's got a mistake in him. You don't get that with De Gea, and I don't think you've got that with De Gea for quite a few years.
Hi, it's Mike. I feel like I'm speaking from a position of authority because I'm also a goalkeeper.
So was I, by the way.
I only became a goalkeeper once I put on some weight, but carry on.
And, just as it happens as well, I sort of did my master's project all about sort of goalkeeping. Yeah. And I think one player that's sort of almost criminally overlooked is Hugo Lloris. I always see him as, it's almost just to start the debate, really, but I always see him as like the best goalkeeper in the Premier League when you take into consideration absolutely everything.
Remember that fumble last week?
When you take into
the week before, it was.
You can't say David De Gea hasn't made any mistakes before.
No.
But when you take everything into consideration, like David De Gea, I'd probably argue is the best shot stopper in world football. But Hugo Lloris has got sort of a leadership, and as well as that, the distribution that David De Gea at this moment in time doesn't have, and that we maybe haven't quite seen Buffon have either. I would still say Buffon's probably, one of the best 3 goalkeepers of all time. But I think Hugo Lloris should always get a mention when in these sorts of conversations.
Harry, what are you saying?
I think I'd have to agree. I think I'd have to agree with you.
Absolutely. I think the question you have to ask yourself when you are thinking about who the best goalkeeper is, in my mind, is who would you want between the sticks when it's 1-on-1 with Messi versus your goalkeeper. And there is only one goalkeeper in Europe at the moment who is the best shot stopper even, and that's David De Gea. Like, I know I'm a Manchester United fan, declare my interest, whatever, but you don't see as many superb reaction saves from many goalkeepers as you do David De Gea. There's usually one a game, which is an astonishing kind of level of performance.
Very quickly on the shot stopper level, Jan Oblak at Atletico Madrid as well. I've never seen sort of a goalkeeper play so deep. He's like usually 6 inches of foot off his line, and he makes all these incredible saves. He's another one he's big now, but he's going to be in the game for another sort of 15 years.
Tim, who would you want 1-on-1 between the sticks if they were facing Lionel Messi? Who would you want?
Well, Henry had the idea there, and it's a school of thought which I think you followed in your goalkeeping career there with José Luis Chilavert, because the late José Luis Chilavert, the late career José Luis Chilavert, he seemed to concentrate on becoming so fat that he would block the entire goal, therefore rendering it impossible for the ball to pass him, which it seems to be effective enough for you to follow his lead.
As Heavy D, the great rapper Heavy D of Heavy D and the Boys, said to me when both he and I happened to be in a lift in Jamaica, and I said, "Look, man, you're the overweight lover," and he said, "No, this is all muscle." The late great Heavy D, I'm not taking a mickey at all. He generally said that. Anyway, let's get back onto the questions. You see how good these students are. I mean, because I can't tell the difference between the students and the experts tonight. Can you, Tim?
We're all on the same team.
Exactly,
we're all kicking the ball in the same direction.
Exactly. Stuart on the Isle of Harris says, long-time listener that loves the show, so thanks for all the hard work. With the tenure of managers getting shorter every year, is this down to the increase in commercial pressure on clubs, or can it be attributed to the shift from managers ruling the roost to players adopting the power within the dressing room? And he says, P.S. Google the beaches in Harris and marvel at the Rio de Janeiro-esque beauty. Indeed, I will do. Tim first.
Well, it depends on where you are. I mean, here in Brazil, the job security for coaches is less than it is in Europe, and that doesn't have anything to do with commercial pressures. It has mostly to do with populist pressures. The president of the club is an elected position. That means that you've always got politics happening inside the clubs. So there's always someone kind of wheedling away and conniving away. And for the man in possession, the president in possession, well, the coach is just a fall guy, so get him out, let's get another one in. There's that feeling that if you sack the coach, your short-term results, even if you make your bad appointments, your short-term results will improve. For just like 3 games. There's an immediate 3-game kind of whoosh you get from sacking your coach. So sometimes this has happened a few days before a big game. Say you've got a big local derby on Saturday, a huge local derby. You really want to win that game. And from a political position, if you're the president, maybe you're coming up for re-election. It's vitally important if you win that game and beat your local rivals. So you sack the coach purely and simply because you think you might have a new factor that might help you win the game on Saturday. So that has nothing to do with commercial pressures and everything to do with a frankly very, very antiquated way of running football.
And what about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the commercial pressures are probably felt more readily in European football than they are in South American football. Again, we've had this debate many times about the structure of football clubs between, the differences in the structures across the two continents, and about how in Brazil and South America very much still sort of social clubs, and the commercial partners don't quite have the power that they do elsewhere. But I think it is. I think there is an element of that. But I think that more importantly than that, in terms of longevity of managers' careers, I think that it's more a reflection of society than anything else. We've become very impatient as a society, and it seems to be that the dream is always to get X in as a manager and let them build a dynasty. But really, when was the last time that happened? And when was the last time that happened with continued success? It's very, very hard in football, an industry, a sport that changes. Every season there are there are changes to the laws of the game and tactical tweaks because of it, it's very, very difficult to remain at the top of your game over a period of 20 years. And Arsene Wenger is the example.
Yeah, if that was the last time it happened, you reckon?
Well, I mean, it's the last time that we've seen a manager given enough time to build a dynasty, to shape a club in their image. And unfortunately for Arsene and for Arsenal fans, that it seems to, that he had success, excuse me, in the first half of his time there, and that sort of bought him the second half, where he's been less successful, FA Cups aside, of course.
Yeah, but he had phenomenal success in the first half.
Of course he did. Huge success.
You can't top winning the league year after year or whatever it is, and the double and the treble and everything. You can't continually do that, can you?
Sure, no, of course.
But what do you essentially think has changed, though? Teams now won't allow, because you'd have thought they'd look at the Arsene Wenger or the Arsenal model and think we'll have some of that.
Well, I think a lot of clubs did, and Wenger changed the game in England.
He's a one-off then, isn't he?
I mean, if you take, I know there was a Bruce Rioch in the middle, but if you take, George Graham's Arsenal and then Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, this is how the Premier League developed in the space of a few years in microcosm. We went from 1-0 to the Arsenal to incredibly entertaining, wonderful football to watch, the likes of which we hadn't really seen domestically in the Premier League, in the old First Division as was. Changed the game completely here.
Yeah, our newsreader Simon Kelsey's got an opinion on this, haven't you?
Well, you were asking what changed. Why did clubs not want to build dynasties anymore in the Arsene Wenger image, perhaps? And I would put to you that Roman Abramovich changed. Because his model of changing managers very quickly has proven successful.
Yeah. Do you want to put that in the next news bulletin as well?
Isn't it interesting that Watford are working a system where they think that the shelf life of their manager is 2 seasons?
Well, it seems like they want to change this time, but circumstances might get the better of them. Let me just remind people that in the early hours of next Saturday, the 2nd of December, this time next Saturday morning, we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the World Football Phone-In. Yes, 20 years. To mark the occasion, I'll be giving over the whole programme to a special 4-hour episode. It'll be just hours after the draw for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. And the plan is to get fans into the 5 Live studios in Salford that night, wearing their country's colours. I'll have a very tight Nigerian top on. Very, very, very tight. What? What?
The way you say it sounds like it should be enticing the supporters
it's shrunk in the wash. Anyway, we'll discuss how the tournament might go, the World Cup that is, and reflect on 20 years of the World Football Phone-In with some very special guests. And if you'd like more information, it's not too late to email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. Tell us which country you support and how long you've been listening to the phone-in, and put the phrase December the 2nd in the subject line. That's crucial. December the 2nd in the subject line. And give us a phone number as well so that the team can get back to you ASAP. I'm afraid we can't promise a place for everyone who expresses an interest in joining us. And you've also got to be over 18, and you've got to be able to arrange your own transport and accommodation. No, you don't want to kip on my floor. Trust me, you don't want to kip on my floor. There's mice and rats and all sorts of things. The ghetto, you know what I'm saying?
Across the UK.
This is BBC 5 Live. Up all night with Dotun Adebayo.
Yeah, you're listening to the World Football Phone-In on 5 Live. I'm Dotun Adebayo. We've got the legendino Tim Vickery with us in South America, in Rio, to be precise, covering everything to do with South American football and South America generally, and players from over there playing in our leagues. We've got the Galatasaray's Paul Serras over this side of the water. He's a Man City fan. Oh, and he's covering European football as well. No,
yeah.
I forgot.
Occasionally,
in
between the Manchester City questions.
I forgot. Yeah, he's covering everything with European football and players from over there playing in Europe as well. And in the studio with us, we've got 3 of our students, if you like, World Football Phone-In fans who are coming in today to give us their contributions to World Football Phone-In as well. We've got Harry with us, we've got Connor, and we've got Mike as well. Is it Mike or Mick?
Mike.
Not Mick?
Not Mick.
You don't want to go for Mick?
I don't want to go for Mick.
You don't want to go for, oh, Mickey, Mickey, Mickey. What's that? How does that song go? Oh, Mickey, Mickey. Do you know what I mean?
I know the one you mean, but I'm not going to do it on national radio.
You've heard the phone in before, clearly. And Harry, you've got a question from one of our listeners, yeah?
I do indeed. This is from Jack Tanner. Almost nothing has been written or spoken in the press about the impact Brexit will have on football in both the UK and mainland Europe. What is Paul's view on this? Are the clubs, leagues and TV companies making preparations, or may it not actually change that much? And could it cause a conflict between the FA and the Premier League? Who would have the differing attitudes towards any possible foreign player limit? And that's from Jack Tanner.
That's I mean, it's slightly feel marginally out of my depth talking on all things Brexit. But one thing is certain, and that is that work permits parameters will be applied not only to players from outside the European Union, but of course players from within the European Union. This is going to be huge. I mean, there are so many uncertainties around Brexit, not only with the effects that it will have on sport and football in this country, but in every aspect of it. It seems we're how long since the referendum, and we've had very, very little movement. And one thing's for sure, this will be down the list of priorities, I think, for most, if not all, of the parties involved in negotiations. But football will have to toe the line, as every other industry within the country will. And it may be an opportunity. It will be possibly to the detriment of the quality of football in this country, but also it's an opportunity then for young British players or those who have British passports to then stake a claim and to say to managers and to chairmen, look, you don't need to go to France, Spain, Italy, Germany. There's lots of talent here ready to step in and play regular first-team football week in, week out. And if we've learned anything from the summer just gone, it's that England have a pretty bright future with the performances in the age group tournaments at European and world level all summer. So lots of uncertainty. I'll be completely honest with you, Jack. It's not my area of expertise, far from it. But
what a shame, because there are several Brexit questions for you this morning.
Well, I mean, I'm more than happy to, offer what little insight I can.
Sorry, I'm telling you, no, genuinely, the one that came in earlier, now, apologies for not remembering who sent it, I do apologise, was all about the impact of the Bosman rule, once Britain leaves the EU. What will happen in terms of English players with regards to the Bosman rule? Will it be affected or not?
Well, the Bosman rule, it was an EU directive, but it's now applied worldwide to football.
But just remind us what it is as well. It's the rule where players
Jean-Marc Bosman was in the 90s, his contract had run out, and the club tried to, the club that he played for tried to get a transfer fee for him. Although he wasn't still contracted, he then took it through. Again, memory's a bit sketchy, but I believe
remember it very well. I remember
he stopped. Didn't he stop playing football for a while this whole court case went on? Because he was kind of in limbo. The club thought that he still had not necessarily a contract, but an obligation to play for them, or at least
Put it this way: he won't be remembered for his football, but he'll be remembered more for the impact, because he wasn't that great a footballer.
But in terms of Brexit, that's not going to make any difference, because the Bosman ruling is applied worldwide.
Okay. Connor, gosh, that is a long email right there. Do we have time for it, Connor?
Is it? I mean, I can summarise if it helps. I'll give it a go. It's from Faisal in Birmingham, who is basically talking about something.
Hang on, I just want to put my feet up.
So it's from Faisal. He's talking a little bit about what Eric Cantona said earlier this week in terms of Guardiola and Mourinho, but also. Okay. He's saying it's about the potentially flawed idea that coaches or managers of certain top teams, believing that their sides cannot yet fulfil the high expectations because the team is short of the right players required for a specific style. So, in other words, can the argument, we need money and top players to challenge for the title, be understood or justified, or does the argument just simply constitute to a serious lack of coaching?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. And Tim, what do you reckon?
Well, obviously, if you don't have the money, then you have to form your players or you have to change your system to something which is viable for the talent at your disposal. For me, one of the great things about football is that it can be interpreted in so many different ways. There is no other sport that has the range of options that football has. The man on the ball, he can pass the ball forward, backwards, to the side, diagonally, long, short, in the air, on the ground. Doesn't have to pass. He can go for a dribble. So there are so many different ways and so many decisions to be taken. And for me, the absolute vital thing is the overall idea. What's the overall idea of play that the team have when they take the field? A coach like Guardiola, and isn't this being fascinating? And Guardiola at Manchester City. At first you're thinking, well, the Premier League is going to be more difficult. He doesn't have the margin for error, and he tinkered. He spent all of last year tinkering, and now he's spent more money and he's got some players in, but he's suffered one or two injuries, and that limits what he can do. But we're really seeing now the beauty of that idea. And I think I have to carry this fight, because if Paul argues this, you'll shout him down on the grounds that he's talking too much about Man City. But English football is benefiting so much from what Guardiola is doing with Manchester City, and that all comes from the idea. It's the idea that has come first. Now, some people would say, all right, in order to be a great coach, he would have to go to somewhere where he doesn't have the resources. So he has to coach his players to get to that level. That takes a long time. That's much more than a one-man project. That's a club project, because you're bringing players on from the age of like 13, 14, 15, 16. So, and what would be nice if Man City are trying to kind of recreate a kind of Barcelona in northwest England. What it would be really nice is if that project works, and it probably is already working, and we're seeing that on Phil Foden, and Paul referred to him as the Stockport Iniesta. But you can see that school of Spanish football in the way that he's developing his football. So that exchange and interchange of ideas, that is really, really, really valuable. And I haven't seen anything from English football which has enthused me as much as that under-17 win, with all of the limitations that under-17 football has. But just the way that they went about their business, the style with which they played, I found that really, really refreshing. And it shows that there is an open mind, and there's a space for new ideas in English football.
I'm so glad that you answered the Manchester City conundrum, so that we don't have to go to Paul now, because we're going to Ellie Oldroyd, who is reporting for us from Brisbane at the Test match, England versus Australia, of course. And Ellie, I'm sorry to do this to you, Ellie. I'm sorry to do this, but we've got Tim Vickery with us in South America. Yeah?
Hello, Tim.
Do you know what's coming, Ellie?
Well, don't ask me anything about South American football, because I could not possibly compete with the Legendino, obviously, on that.
Well,
I can talk about cricket all day.
Well, I'm glad you can, because he can't compete with you. In fact, this is what he says.
I don't like cricket. Oh, no. I love it.
I'm so sorry, Ellie, but that's his
Always
theme.
Good choice,
that's
a bit of 10cc.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
that's fine. That's fine. Listen, well, I mean, I'm sitting alongside Daniel Norcross, Test match special commentator extraordinaire, and we're sitting in the most glorious sunshine. It's a beautiful afternoon here, and Australia are 239 for 7 now, and Steve Smith is on 92 and Pat Cummins on 17, and the tail, Daniel, is wagging here for Australia. And we saw Smith and Anderson and Broad bowling really, really fantastically well with the new ball just before lunch. But at the moment, we haven't got either of them on. We've got Wokes bowling from this end, the Vulture Street end, and we've had Moeen Ali bowling as well. So what's going on? Has the boot gone from off the throat, in the charming expression that they have?
It has, and it's done so in a rather baffling fashion, because Broad and Anderson are out on the field. I can see Anderson at deep square leg, as Wokes bowls a bouncer, and Broad's here at mid-on. And the convention is, straight after lunch, especially if you've got them 7 down, the ball was quite new still, it was only 9 overs old, that you put your 2 best bowlers on, and they have undeniably been England's 2 best bowlers. They've taken 5 of the 7 wickets to fall. They've been going in under 2 runs and over, so you'd expect them to bowl. Now, there are rather niggly rumours of a possible side complaint or possible hip problem that was contracted by Anderson when he was batting. yesterday. They've been denied by the England camp. They say he's absolutely fine. And he is indeed out there fielding. But why he's not bowling, I do not know. Now, we have to give a little bit of credit to the two Australians as well, because Pat Cummins has played splendidly. He's not flamboyantly. He's not been smashing the ball everywhere. He got a very fortuitous 5 when the ball ricocheted from his bat when he went through for a single and ran down to the boundary. But his defensive technique is impeccable. He's faced 59 balls. At the other end, the man, I get a feeling that we're going to be out here for 7 weeks watching Stephen Smith bat for half that time, because I don't know how England are going to get him out. They've tried every single plan under the sun, and he just denies himself. He's tempted and always denies himself. He just doesn't look like going anywhere.
Anyone tuning in may have missed what's happened overnight if you're just waking up and thinking, oh my goodness, I mean, Steve Smith is still there. He's been batting since the start today. He lost his first partner. Sean Marsh was caught Anderson off Broad for 51. That was with the old ball. And then the new ball was taken. Tim Payne was caught behind off Anderson for 13. Absolutely fantastic catch by Johnny Bairstow behind the stumps. And then Mitchell Starc caught and bowled by Stuart Broad. Another fantastic dismissal as well for just 5 balls for 6. He hit a 6 and was then out 2 balls later. That was 209 for 7. They've gone on to 239 for 7 now. And Dotun, if you're not a specialist cricket fan, and I don't know whether the guys in the studio, whether Tim and Paul watch much cricket,
They
you might
watch
think
it. They watch
yeah,
it. They love
yeah.
it.
Well, because there's the appeal for kind of occasional cricket watchers tends to be 2020 cricket, when it's bish bash bosh, wallop all around the ground. We have had in the entire day so far 74 runs scored since the start of the day, and 3 wickets have fallen. So this is one for the aficionados, I suppose you could say. But it's such a contest. It's so fascinating to watch how these things develop. And over the course of the 3 days we've had so far, everything has changed from session to session. So England very much had the morning session here. At the moment, this is Australia's session, about 40 minutes after lunch. But yeah, 239 for 7 Australia are now. That's in reply to England's 302 all out. And that lead, that England lead, is just dwindling. It's now down to 63 runs.
Sounds like Bobby Fischer and Boris Baski in Reykjavik all over again.
It is. Chess on grass. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Spot on.
Oh, thank you. We'll come back to you very shortly, and thank you for the latest update. We'll have continual updates from the Gabba throughout the course of Up All Night, and of course...
Don, can next time, can you tear up with the Turtles? Not 10cc, tear up with the Turtles.
No, Tim.
Eleanor G, I think you're swell. Do please.
It wouldn't work for you, though, because the reference is you, and it works so well. That's your theme tune. I can't do anything about it. Anyway, let's get some more football questions in. Mike, I see you've got a question for, is it both pundits?
I think it is. It's from Jack in Renfrewshire, and he sent an email in about sort of Charlie Nicholas, saying he was a hugely gifted player with the Celtic in the early 80s, went to Arsenal instead of Liverpool later in the decade, saying that money must have had something to do with that. He had a few highlights, but didn't achieve what he should have done, unlike Kenny Dalglish, who also left Celtic to pursue his career, at Liverpool. Everyone will remember Dalglish quite properly, giving his dignified response to events such as Hillsborough, Heysel and the Ibrox disaster of 1970, but few people will remember Nicholas in the same football context as Dalglish, even though his talent was arguably equal to that of Dalglish.
I think that's fair comment, I think. And the choice of not maybe not the choice of club, but the choice of City, I don't think it was right for him. And I think at
City
that
more than club?
I think at that vital
Well, he got
time,
the Champagne Charlie moniker for from somewhere, didn't he?
He was more interested in off the field activities. Just at that vital moment in his career, I think he took his eye off the ball. And he's another one. I'm sure if he could have his time again, his priorities would be different.
Are you saying you can't have a laugh in Liverpool?
No, of course you can. But London is far bigger, and there are far more options, and all the media is there as well. Well, so much of the media, Liverpool wouldn't have let him get away with it. They'd have moved him on pretty quickly. I know he had an attritional relationship with George Graham, but I think Liverpool would have been sterner with him.
Jack goes on a little bit more in the email, and he mentions another.
Well, there's more.
A little bit more.
I've only got an hour, 38 minutes left.
He mentions a Scottish player by the name of Charlie Cook, and he said he was a fabulous player who should have won far more caps for Scotland than he did. I was just wondering, do either of you know any players that didn't achieve their sort of international potential and maybe should have won more caps than they should have, whether or not because of coach's selection or something like that?
Well, we spoke about this last time I was on the show 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that was Paul Scholes. We're talking about players that retired early. I can't remember the context, but Scholes retired on the back of being asked to play essentially on the left-hand side of the midfield. And, we struggled, I think, at that time to really utilise a player of Scholes' ability and to also try and fit him into to the midfield that was pretty, it was pretty impressive midfield. If we could have got a coach to find out how to put them all together to work properly, and I think, from an England perspective, I think Scholes retired. Completely his decision, and no judgment from me on it. But as an England supporter, I would have loved to have seen him go on and become England's best cap player, and who knows what, utilised properly. And if that had happened, who knows what England could have achieved.
Interesting how so many of these, what you would think were not the crucial permutations of a footballer's career, come into play, whether it be they choose the wrong city to go to sign for, or whether just by serendipity a coach that they could do with managing England doesn't happen to be there at the time that they're there, and so on. Can't a player's talent shine through all of that? I wonder, because what we're essentially saying here is that success on the field is not just a matter of skill, but perhaps more importantly a matter of luck, to be at the right place at the right time.
Luck is such an important part of, and if you speak to ex-players, they will all they'll reinforce the importance of luck. And one player who, hearing that question, one player from a generation, 2 generations perhaps earlier, that springs to mind for me is Glenn Hoddle, who Ardiles, who played alongside him for a decade, defines Glenn Hoddle as Maradona without pace. And he come across, Ardiles had come across from South America.
That's not nice.
No, but the Maradona bit is very, very nice indeed, because when he came across from Argentina, he didn't expect to find anyone with that amount of technique in English football. And he found someone, the only fella he can think of as better in terms of technique on the ball was Maradona. When Hoddle he played for Arsene Wenger at Monaco and achieved great things there. I remember one of his opponents there saying, what can you do against a man who has hands instead of feet? Because he could really do anything with the ball. But perhaps not an orthodox character, perhaps a strange character. And I think for years, English football also, it distrusted its flair players. It loved a great player, Brian Robson, for example, but it loved Brian Robson, that first man out of the trenches, that kind of up and at 'em type thing. It loved that kind of player because it saw that kind of player as reliable, as dependable. Someone like Hoddle wasn't ever made to feel as important as he should have been, I think, in the England team. And he was another one who was played like, wide left or something.
That's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And because he wasn't quick, playing him wide is never going to work. You want to play him in the middle where he's got that whole panorama in front of him. So he was another player, I think, who was misused, because at the end of the day, it is a team sport, and what really matters is how you fit into the collective scheme. And one of Brian Clough's lines that I love, he says, the quickest way to destroy someone is to ask them to do something that they're not capable of doing. And if you do that to a player, if you play him in the wrong place or something like that, and you will never get the best out of him. So selecting him correctly in a collective idea that works for that player, I think, is absolutely vital as well.
I'd be interested, Tim and Paul, for you to... I'm just thinking of there's quite a few parallels with the players we're talking about with Kieran Tierney at the moment at Celtic, who is at that point of his career where he's not getting played in the correct position for Scotland. He's being played on the right rather than the left. And he's getting, linked with Manchester United. He's getting linked with Liverpool. He's getting linked with everyone left, right and centre. What do you think is the right move for him?
He's getting linked with Charlton.
Sadly not.
I think you said everyone. Sorry.
But he's at the point in his career where he he could stay at Celtic for the rest of his career. He has said that to some journalists. I'm just intrigued as to whether or not, if he did stay at Celtic, you know, they're doing so well in Scotland, but would that ruin what is such a precocious and very exciting Scottish talent?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. It's difficult because there's no guarantee. I mean, he's well established in the Celtic team and for the national team now. But that would be, he would put that at risk if he moved south of the border. He is absolutely incredibly talented young player. There are a few now at Celtic. Moussa Dembele, another one who is exceptionally talented. But then, you know, people will question Tierney's ambition if he decides to stay at Celtic, and we've seen it. You know, it's possible these days to criticise anything, whichever side of the fence you sit on. People will criticise him if he stays at Celtic for his entire career. Yeah, there are the romantics that would see that as a beautiful thing, the team that he supported since he was, you know, a child and the only team that he ever wanted to play for. But then if he wants to develop, if he wants to go on and win at a continental level, he needs to make that move. Well, as to what the correct club is for him right
Paul,
now, that's, yeah.
Paul, generally, I'm asking this, how does a player in Europe, in South America, I think it's fair to say that the moves are predicated by money. Am I right, Tim? Essentially predicated by money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Not just from the player, but from the player's agent, the player's family, the club want to sell. Everyone wants to sell.
But in Europe, it's different. It's more complex than that, if I can put it that way. It might sound better, but I'm not sure it is, that it's complicated by loads of other things. How does a player make the decision as to when to move, where to move, and how to move?
Yes, it's a good question. I think that you know, there are differing factors that will be considered when a player is considering a move. You know, financial one is still a huge part of it over here. You know, Tierney might you know, be hopefully not, but horrendously injured tomorrow and never play the game again. And he's 20 years old, and you know, if he'd have got a big move, I mean, he's bound to be on a decent wage by you know, normal standards at Celtic, a wage that he could live on for the rest of his life, I'm sure. But
just sorry to just interrupt a little bit, and I apologise. But it's almost, as Conor was saying a moment ago, if he's being touted left, right, and centre, if so many teams are after him, then money probably isn't a factor as such. It's like with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. There were a lot of teams after him, but he chose Liverpool over Chelsea for, you know, what Roy Hodgson would have called in those days. Is it Roy Hodgson that would have said for footballing reasons, or whichever England manager it was? Do you know what I mean? He chose them for footballing reason. And what are those footballing reasons? How does a player navigate its way around all the pitfalls that await them if they make the wrong decision like that?
This is probably not as applicable to Tierney, a left fullback, but okay, I mean, this may be something that an attacking player would take into consideration if both of those teams were in for them. Do you want to go and play in a rigid, organised team where you would be expected first and foremost to pull your weight, to do your job? Or would you rather go to an exciting attacking team where you will have to work just as hard, but you are given a certain amount of creative freedom? I think if you're a creative player, if you're a creative entity, you know, it doesn't matter about football. If you're given the opportunity to explore that creative side, I think that would be probably a reason to choose one over the other. But then if you want to win, I mean, at the moment, Manchester United are in a much better position. They are much more stable as a team. They're much more predictable. We've seen these things levelled at Mourinho and United in recent times as bad things, but you want consistency. You want to be able to go toe-to-toe with any team and to negate what they do to try and hurt you. So maybe from a defensive perspective, he would want to go to United over Liverpool, but an attacking player may choose differently. So many things come into it. And also, it may be down to the fact that, I mean, he's from the Isle of Man. I know he's a Scottish international Celtic fan, but the Isle of Man's not a million miles away from Manchester or Liverpool, and it may be a family influence. His dad might be a big Liverpool supporter, who knows? So there are a number of factors, just as there are for any person choosing between two
and
jobs.
A black cat might have crossed his path as well.
Across the UK.
This is BBC 5 Live. Up all night with Dotun Adebayo.
Yeah, World Football Phone-In. So last quarter of the World Football Phone-In, as the youngsters would say. Let's have a quick fire round. Are all our youngsters up for a quick fire round? Mike, you up for it?
Up for it.
Connor, you up for it?
Of course.
Harry, you up for it?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to throw in a little idea into the mix now, okay? So we'll rattle through the questions. You can comment on anybody else's questions as you like, but you've got to do it fast. Do you get that, Paul?
Are you suggesting maybe I'm slightly too verbose?
Don't worry. If necessary, I will jump in and move it on, okay? But if you can't answer a question, just say Mornington Crescent.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, you get it. Okay. Oh, by the way, just wondered what Diego Lugano, West Brom fame shame is doing these days, says Joseph in Birmingham.
He's still playing for Sao Paulo in Brazil, and it looks like he could well become a director in the near future.
Right. Also, Tim...
That was fast, wasn't it? Through you.
It did, actually. I'm not even...
It was too fast.
You did it on purpose, didn't you?
Fun, till her daddy takes a two-bit away.
Yeah, he's trying to buy time. I know it's controversial, but I think Wayne Rooney underachieved given the natural talent. I'm aware of his stats, and I'm a Manchester United fan, etc. But I think he underachieved. Anybody?
Totally agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, on a personal level, didn't maybe reach the level they could have, but can't really argue with his trophy cabinet. Certainly at club level.
Yeah, I think it's Connor here. I think you can only have to look at the fact that his career tailed off from about the age of 28, and to show that he did not fulfil the potential that he showed as a 16-year-old. Maybe that's partly genetics, maybe that's partly injuries, but you wouldn't have expected that 16-year-old to have been such a drain on a club like Manchester United by the time he left.
I'd sort of almost disagree. I'd say that he's actually underappreciated by fans. I think one of the problems with English football is that English players are always compared to the best in the world, when maybe they should just be compared to other English players. And in that sense, Wayne Rooney's one of the best English players, definitely of this generation, potentially of all time. If you look at other nations, I don't want to pay them any disrespect, but if you look at Ireland, Robbie Keane will be compared to the greatest Irish players as opposed to the greatest in the world, and that's a problem that Wayne Rooney has as an England player.
Luke from Glasgow says, will Aguero start the first game of the World Cup, and will Higuain have a seat on the plane after his recent omissions from the squad? Paul? Tim, you thought I was going to go to you, didn't you? Hold your fire.
It is my region.
No, don't worry. It is his club.
Poor gentleman, he passed the ball over.
Yeah, go on, Paul.
I'm going to pass this one over to Tim. This is Tim's region.
You'll be sorry.
Well, Aguero, I think, has resolved the debate about who Argentina's centre forward is going to be by playing very well and scoring in both their recent friendlies. Higuain has been out of the squad, but one of the centre forwards, Dario Benedetto of Boca Juniors, has just suffered a long-term injury, and it looks like it's all over for the World Cup for him. So it's Higuain and Icardi now behind Aguero. I probably tend to the view that Higuain will get on the plane, and as long as he's fit, and that's been a problem for Aguero come the end of the season. You wonder about whether he lasts the entire season, but as long as he's fit, I think Aguero will be the first choice centre forward.
Paul, how is football in Ukraine these days, given the ongoing but not so well covered troubles there? Asked Graham in Camp Vancouver. Do you want to pass this one over to Tim as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, Shakhtar Donetsk is populated by 80% Brazilians, so I'm sure that Tim could probably take this one on. It's been difficult because that Donbass region of Ukraine, where Shakhtar Donetsk obviously play their football, was so key, so crucial to Ukrainian football, and we have seen issues, not only with clubs underachieving, but also with players loath to sort of go back, certainly when the problems in East Ukraine were at their peak. We've got issues where teams like Zorya Luhansk are playing in the Europa League, but they're playing 600 or 700 miles from their home stadium, and they're playing in Odessa, I think. Well, they certainly did last season. I think it's the same this year as well. And this isn't good. This isn't a good situation for anybody, and I feel particularly for Zorya Luhansk, who have come from nowhere really, and they've qualified for continental competition, and that's coincided with these issues in in their city, in their region, and it's probably had a negative effect having to play so many games so far from home. So it's not ideal, but football will persist, I'm sure. Sorry, it was a bit too long, that answer.
Yeah. Go on. This is from Lazan, who's a Coach Lazan in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. Ooh, we have our refs go on strike due to the bad behaviour of the parents, players and some coaches. Have refs ever gone on strike in your regions? Indeed. Should refs ever go on strike? Anybody? Refs go on strike, Harry?
I think it'd be fair enough if they wanted to.
Well, why? Refs go on strike, so they sabotage an entire match just because they want to strike.
So where I come from, in my hometown, my brother used to play football as a youngster, and some of the abuse the referees would get from the parents was just horrendous. And I do sometimes feel a couple of my friends were referees, and obviously this isn't professional football, this is youngsters, but they would really suffer because, they're like, 16 years old and being shouted at by these parents who are the same age as their parents, and they really, really struggled. And I do feel like sometimes if a referee, if it's too much, I think for their own well-being, they should make a stand and say, do you know what, I've had enough of this. And I think it is totally fair enough to strike. And I know it would put a lot of things, at risk, like the game and a lot of money in the real world. But I think it's fair enough.
It's Mike here. I'd simply say that, if some of the parents think they can do a good job of it, stick them in the middle for a bit.
Very good point.
I don't think so. They'd have to declare an interest, wouldn't they?
Well, I used to be a referee.
Simon, what?
Yeah.
You were a referee, a real referee?
Yeah.
Is that why you're all dressed in black?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, okay.
That's just how I go around. Yeah, I've got my cards in my pocket as well. No, I used to be a referee, and as others have mentioned, I always used to when I started out at 16. Actually, I always used to prefer. It was the first year that you could, once you were 16, you could then start refereeing adult football, and it was always much easier in many respects refereeing adult games than it was kids games, because as has been mentioned, you'd have the parents on the sidelines. It's an issue which has been talked about a lot, certainly all since then and before, and will continue to be, no doubt. And I think the FA has done a lot of work in trying to remedy some of that, and I think there have been cases where referees in certainly in certain leagues have gone on strike, as it were.
Do the kids come up to you, having seen the behaviour of professional footballers on the telly, and do they say, "Oh, ref, Tim Glasgow, you should have gotten a Specsavers"?
Oh, definitely.
They do that as well?
Absolutely. It depends on the age groups. Funnily enough, I found.
Do they push you over as well?
Never quite got that far, but it was under 12s, horrendous. 15s, 16s.
Who would be a ref?
Generally a bit better.
Who would be a ref, eh? Lucy says, what do you think of Claudio Jacob? He's Argentinian. Do you think he's undervalued? And if he played for the likes of Man City, do you think he'd be a star, a superstar, a star player? Also, what do you think of Solomon Rondon as well? You guessed it. I'm a West Brom fan.
Big Rondon is a real handful. Terrific.
He
centre
hasn't been
forward.
scoring,
Sometimes you look at him and you think, well, he could do more. He hasn't been scoring a lot of goals for Venezuela either recently. But he's a physical handful.
His brothers, do they score a little bit better? His brothers, he's got a couple of brothers, hasn't he? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'm not aware of them.
Oh right, sorry, maybe I'm confusing you.
Jacob is. I don't think he's got enough, frankly, to play for one of the big glamorous sides, because I don't think he's really creative enough. Good, solid citizen, but I don't think he's really got the ability to be with a top side.
Yeah. What do you do with the striker from overseas, Paul, who you buy because he scores really well, but he's not scoring in the Premier League? What do you do with a striker like that? Do you just get rid of him and think he doesn't work out, he can't transfer his skills? Or do you put an arm around him and say, come on, son, my job depends on you scoring?
I think it depends on the character of the player in question. I think there are those that respond to the arm around the shoulder and the encouragement, and there are those that respond better to, having a strip torn off of them. It depends entirely on the individual character.
Because he cost Tony Pulis his job, didn't he? I mean, not Solomon Rondon alone, but I'm just saying if he'd scored a few more.
I think a really strange situation with Tony Pulis, and I think it goes back to that conversation that we had earlier. That are you in a position to bring in an elite coach and throw enough money and players at them to until success is guaranteed.
Do me a favour, just hold that thought just on the cliffhanger. That's exactly where I want it from. No, not a wicket at all. We're just gently going over to Ellie Oldroyd, who's part of our cricket team, commentary team in Brisbane for the Ashes. Ellie, good morning.
Yeah, good morning again, Dotun. Yeah, I wish I was going to tell you about a wicket, but I'm not, I'm afraid. But 256 Australia just going through to now, for 7. So no more wickets since lunch, and the lead is just kind of being chipped away at. So that is now down to 46, I think, the lead, 46. That's right. But it's the kind of thing that you can worry about if you're awake at 3:45 in the morning and you're thinking, oh my God, the worries of the world are on my shoulder and Jimmy Anderson's off the field injured. I can set your mind at rest. He's okay. He had some problems with the sport strapping on his shoulder, I think. Graham Swan, what's that about?
Yeah, he just fancied going. Like I say, he went off to do the crossword to finish it off. He suddenly got a moment of inspiration, so he went to finish it off. We did panic. I thought he'd hurt his side, but he's gone off to get some shoulder strap, and he's back on and he's playing. So all is well. All is not well, particularly with the scorecard, because we could do with Australia losing their 8th, 9th and 10th wickets. But as far as Jimmy Anderson is concerned, all is good.
Yep, so we've got Cummins on 30, Smith on 96. But besides all of that, Graham is listening fascinated to the World Football Phone-In.
I am indeed. And
Big
I've got a question.
Newcastle fan.
I've got a question. I'm a Newcastle fan. I want to know what Tamuri Ketsubaya's up to now. Still the perpetrator of the greatest ever celebration.
Yeah.
He was coaching in Cyprus the last I heard. I think Apoel Nicosia was the last club that I know of, and he was coaching them in the Champions League, still with that exceptionally shiny head of his. But he was doing really well as a coach in Cyprus.
Oh, good. I thought he was at Orenburg these days, but
Swanee, great to have you. Great to have you on our team, Swanee. Really appreciate
it's lovely to
it.
be here.
Yeah,
keep fighting through the night, boys.
No, you keep bringing us updates from where you are through the night, if you don't mind. You're doing the hard work. We're just here to fill in between you. No, generally, do you not wish...
Dutton, this is genuinely not hard work, believe me. There is nothing I can imagine in the world I would rather be doing than sitting watching a really brilliant Ashes Test match.
Except for dipping in that pool, as you've mentioned already. That would be hard work.
I guess I say that is really not happening. Actually, one of our colleagues from one of the commentary boxes just along from us actually did an over and a half in his swimmers in the pool. He's not built like Jimmy Anderson, this guy. He's an absolutely top bloke, but he's not the slimmest person in the world. So I'm sure he did a wonderful job, and I said, look, you've taken one for the team. Yeah. You've done it, so nobody else has to do it from these commentary boxes. To just give you the score again, 256 for 7. That's a lead for England, still of 46. Smith is on 96, Cummins is on 30. So this tail for Australia is wagging just a little bit more than we would have liked from an English point of view.
Ellie, thanks very much.
We're still ahead.
Well, let's hope so.
Optimism.
Let's hope we're still ahead the next time we get to talk to you very shortly. Swanee, thanks a lot. Ellie, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Dotun.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is the one. Don't forget, it's more into Crescent if you can't answer the questions. This is from Wesley, who says, why does Roma not have a special kit for Derby della Capitale this season? What is Derby della Capitale?
Roma Lazio, the Rome derby match.
Okay. What is it like Tottenham and Arsenal last week?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess. I mean, I'll be honest. Have they been?
Resist it.
No, of course not.
Have they been
Someone
releasing?
shout Mornington Crescent, please.
Have they been releasing a kit just for a derby match every season recently? I mean, if they've moved away from that, then I think that can only be a good thing. So let's not complain about that.
Shouldn't derby match? I'm asking the youngers this as well, because we're from the older generation, myself and Tim. I drag him to my generation, whether he says he's a couple of years younger than me. Don't believe all that nonsense.
People try to put us down
just because we get around. And like I said to my friend, when I was only 18 years old and he was 22, hope I die before I become 22. And I'm glad that was nonsense anyway. But in our generation, a derby match was a proper event for the whole neighbourhood. Everybody knew there was Tottenham versus Arsenal where I lived. Everybody knew it on a Saturday morning. It's Tottenham versus Arsenal. It was like an FA Cup match. It was something special. Shouldn't teams have a special kit or, special something? Shouldn't they do something to make Derby Day special again? Because I get the feeling that... No, well, hold on, we'll come to you in a moment, Paul.
No.
We'll come to you in a moment.
The answer is no.
Talking about Man United and Man City...
It's surprisingly, Dotun, I'm actually going to talk about Scotland because I covered Hibs all of last season in the Scottish Championship, and they obviously have the Edinburgh Derby with Hearts.
You covered it for student
radio, yeah.
Student radio.
Covered
You get
Hibs
to go
all
up
of
to
last
Scotland.
Season. Yeah, well, I was at Edinburgh University, so but we got into Hibs every week, and I think the idea that derbies have kind of lost their special essence is a little bit of a Premier League bubble, because I think you go elsewhere, especially in Scotland. You go to the Old Firm, which has its own special thing going on about it. But the Tayside Derby in Dundee is a fantastic spectacle whenever it comes about. The Edinburgh Derby is equally and sometimes better than the Old Firm, and you can have questions about the quality of football, but it's an enjoyable spectacle all the same. And you come, I think it's a little bit of a shame when you come down to England after witnessing 20,000 people singing "Sunshine on Leith" at the top of their voice after thrashing Hearts 3-1 in the Scottish Cup, and you watch, say, Arsenal Spurs or Manchester United Manchester City, and it's this kind of a little bit boring, a little bit stale, just kind of sanitised version of what it used to be.
It never used
exactly.
to be. Yeah.
And I think the idea of adding something special like a kit, or I don't know, like a special pre-game display or something along those lines, is total nonsense. I think it would ruin what is already pretty much on the way ruined.
Oh, that's harsh. Okay, Mike. Unlike Connor, you've got obviously student debts of about £500,000 to pay. He hasn't got a penny. Remember, he went to university in Edinburgh. He's one of those Sassenachs. One of the Sassenachs that went north when all the rest were coming south. Anyway, but I suppose West Ham, your derby is it Tottenham? Is it?
I guess it would be at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, we would usually say Millwall, but they're down in the Championship. We haven't played them for a few years.
I know.
Who knows? Maybe next year.
They're delighted. You never know. You never know. But in terms of it, do you get the sense when you don't have your own ground anymore. I know you've got this Olympic Stadium or whatever, but do you get the sense when you're in that part of the East End that, a derby day is upon you?
I haven't been to a derby game in a while, but what I would say is that derby matches, the atmosphere comes from the crowd, and the way the Premier League's gone recently, with it becoming a lot more, obviously you want to win games, but with the way the business has become a lot more results oriented, managers having shorter reigns in charge, fans don't want to lose as opposed to wanting to go out and beat their rivals. So from the second the kickoff whistle's blown, fans are on edge. Yeah. They just don't want to lose. Recent games, like the West Ham Tottenham game at the Olympic Stadium that Tottenham won 3-2, and the West Ham fans were on edge from the beginning. And as soon as the first goal went in, Tottenham went 1-0 up. The crowd was silent, and there was no getting behind the team or anything like that. And that something like that would really affect the West Ham players, because silence, you cannot get anything from the crowd. It's not going to help at all.
Yeah, that's what is so frustrating about watching Premier League football at the moment, is that fans don't seem to understand anymore that even when you're losing, you get behind your side and you make some noise. I think it's most obvious at the bigger clubs, and West Ham, since moving to the London Stadium, have suffered from it as well, as you say. But if you go to Stamford Bridge, or you're watching it on TV, or you go to the Emirates or Old Trafford or the Etihad, etc., etc., if they go behind in a derby game, as Mike says, it is absolutely dead, apart from maybe the cheering from the away side. You go to a derby game at any other level, and that's going all the way down in England and at the top, and levels up in Scotland. I went to a Basel Zurich derby in Switzerland that was 1-0, and it was absolutely noise.
Mornington Crescent.
Mornington Crescent, go on.
Harry, Mornington Crescent, do you want to say it?
Would you like me to say it?
No. I'd like you to talk about Leeds very quickly.
Leeds,
Derby. What about Derby games?
I was going to talk about Derby games, and I was actually going to say, you mentioned student radio and obviously university.
Yeah.
In Cardiff, we have something called Welsh Varsity, which is Swansea University versus Cardiff University.
Yeah.
And it's such a massive event for us, and everyone has a kit, and it's like a big party the whole day. The whole city is buzzing.
Yeah.
And I think what you said about having not only a special kit, but like a pre-match performance or something. Why stop at a good kit? Why not get, I don't know, cheerleaders, flags, dare I say it, vuvuzelas, anything. Make it really special. I really do think bringing it back, maybe it won't be what it used to be, but just making a real effort and making it special.
And you do call it varsity?
We call it varsity, Welsh Varsity, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know the varsity students' rag?
No.
We had a rag at the Popular, we had a rag at the truck, but the rag we had at the made customers quite a shock. Then we went to the and then, oh my, you should have seen the rag we had at the grill room of the cry. You don't know that?
No, I don't, but I'll pitch it. I'll pitch it to the AU president and hope he wins next year. And in Welsh as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, and get me to sing it as well.
Congratulations, you've got Dotun to sing.
Yeah,
yes,
you forced both his hands to sing. Anyway, let me tell listeners very quickly. Okay, next week at this time we will be still having a 4-hour special of the World Football Phone-In. In the early hours of next Saturday, the 2nd of December, we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the World Football Phone-In. It's been going on for 20 years now. Tim's been doing this thing for 20 years. Yes, 20 years. He's even older than me. He's been doing it longer than me. Anyway, to mark the occasion, I'll be giving over the whole programme to a special 4-hour episode. It'll be just hours after the draws of the 2018 World Cup in Russia, and the plan is to get fans into the Five Live studios in Seoul for that night, wearing their country's colours. If you'd like to join in, then do email us upallnight@bbc.co.uk. Remember to put in the subject grid of the email the words December the 2nd. Make sure you have that in, and we'll get back to you. And we can't promise everybody will get in, but we'll do as well as we can. You've got to be 18 to join in. Thanks very much to Connor, to Mike, to Harry, to Tim. Tim, thanks.
Cheers. See you next week.
Paul, have you got manners? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See you next week.
BBC 5 Live.